The world around me flickered into existence in the form of a nightmare. The darkness echoed with a chilling stillness that was hauntingly familiar. I was back in this world again, a place I'd begun to dread. Every night, without fail, I found myself here, navigating the shadowy corners of my subconscious, looking for her, for Lisa. Lisa, the love of my life, vanished over 2 weeks ago. One day, we were planning our future, talking about getting a dog and whether we wanted to eventually move out of the city. And the next, she was just gone. Not a trace of her was left behind. Nothing but the empty space on our bed and a hole in my heart that seemed to grow larger with each passing moment. I was lost in more ways than one. At first, the dreams seemed random, disjointed pieces of my subconscious mind grappling with the loss I couldn't come to terms with in my waking hours. They were nightmarish landscapes filled with shadows and fear, cold and impersonal. But then, something changed. I found myself standing at the edge of a vast, stormy sea, the waves crashing against the shore, mimicking the turmoil that raged within me. The wind howled, tearing at my clothes, as if trying to mirror the devastation that was slowly eating me away. There was an ominous feeling in the air, a feeling of impending doom. But amidst the chaos, there was a beacon of light. Lisa, she stood at the other end of the beach, her silhouette bathed in the pale moonlight. I tried to reach her, to call out to her, but no sound left my lips. I could do nothing but watch as she was slowly swallowed by the shadowy waves, leaving me in the merciless grip of despair. Every night, I woke up from these nightmares soaked in cold sweat, the echo of Lisa's fading image still fresh in my mind. I was trapped in a vicious cycle of sleep, nightmares, and harsh reality. Her absence was an open wound, and the nightmares were the salt that kept it from healing. As days turned into nights and nights into days, a thought began to nag me. Was there more to these nightmares than just the manifestation of my grief? Could these be messages or signs guiding me to Lisa? The notion seemed ludicrous, yet something within me refused to ignore it. It clung onto this thread of hope, as thin as it was, and began to pull. And so began my desperate search for meaning in the labyrinth of my nightmares. Little did I know then how much deeper this rabbit hole would take me. Night after night, I plunged back into the shadowy world that had begun to feel terrifyingly real. The dreams were no longer just dreams. They had become an alternate reality, one where Lisa was still part of my life, even if only in fleeting glimpses. The more I tried to make sense of these dreams, the more the lines between reality and fantasy blurred. I found myself standing on the same desolate beach, the thundering waves mirroring the chaos within me. But each time, the scene would change subtly, a new detail added, a fresh clue woven into the fabric of my dreamscape. An old weeping willow, a red scarf fluttering in the wind. Each image seemed to hold a piece of a mysterious puzzle that I was compelled to solve. The more I analyzed these dreams, the more I realized how inexplicably connected they seemed to Lisa, the weeping willow. Wasn't there one just like it near Lisa's childhood home? And the red scarf, Didn't it resemble the one she would wear on cold winter days? It all started to feel strangely familiar, and yet unsettlingly alien. It was during these long, sleepless nights that I began to meticulously jot down every detail from my nightmares, attempting to decode their cryptic message. Every night, I would wake up from the dream world, my heart pounding and my head reeling with fresh images. I would then spend the rest of the night under the dim glow of a table lamp, feverishly scribbling down every detail I could remember, every symbol, every sign. My journal became my sanctuary, a testament to my desperate search for Lisa. Despite the reoccurring dread and the impending sense of doom, I found a purpose within these nightmares. They provided a direction, a path leading to her. I clung onto the tiny flicker of hope that these nightmares were more than just fragments of my grief-stricken mind. Perhaps they were my only link to Lisa, a guiding light in the darkness that was her disappearance. I had become a prisoner of my own mind, chained by the visions that both tormented and guided me. The nightmares held a terrifying power over me, pulling me into their eerie reality, a reality I hoped would lead me to her. For her, I was ready to dive deep into the very abyss that terrified me. For her, I was willing to confront the demon that was my own mind. The dreams kept shifting, twisting, and transforming, each more intricate and puzzling than the last. Yet, one night, amidst the chaos, a new figure emerged from the shadows. A man, an unfamiliar face, a stranger in my dreamscape. He seemed to blend into the nightmares, a silhouette lurking in the periphery. Yet, his presence was unmistakably significant. My first instinct was to dismiss him as another random element of my subconscious, but his reoccurring appearance and the sense of dread that he brought with him convinced me otherwise. His presence was a tangible weight, a palpable threat in the world of my nightmares. He wasn't merely a spectator. He seemed entwined with the narrative, an aura of menace growing with each dream. He never interacted with me, always standing off to the side, watching from the distance. But his eyes, cold and calculating, never left Lisa. He seemed to be observing her, studying her like a predator, watching its prey. I felt a primal fear, an instinctual urge to protect Lisa from the stranger. But the dream world had rules of its own, binding me, rendering me helpless. His figure was shadowy, his features vague, yet there was a familiarity about him that I couldn't shake off. Was he someone I encountered before, or was he merely a figment of my chaotic mind, an embodiment of my fear and guilt? The questions gnawed at me, causing my stomach to churn with a mix of apprehension and dread. The faceless stranger in my dreams became my obsession. I started to sketch him in my journal, trying to remember every detail about him, every mannerism, every strange glint in his eyes. Every waking moment was spent pondering about his identity and his role in the grand scheme of things. The dreams continued to unravel, each night bringing me face to face with the faceless man. His unsettling presence became a constant in my nightmares, adding a new layer of complexity to the already cryptic dreamscape. The questions kept piling up, but the answers remained elusive, locked away in the labyrinth of my mind. The man from my dreams was now a part of my reality, an ominous figure lurking in the back of my mind, pushing me further down the rabbit hole. The dream world was morphing, evolving into something much darker and sinister. Little did I know then that the stranger in my dreams would push me into a path that I could never turn back from. The days merged into each other as my obsession with the stranger grew. My waking hours were spent poring over my journal, cross-referencing every clue that emerged from my nightmares. My once casual sketches had turned into frantic illustrations of the mysterious figure, annotated with observations and theories about his identity. I became a recluse, hauling up in my apartment, the shades drawn, my mind a battlefield of thoughts and theories. I could almost hear the tick-tock of the clock echoing in the hollow silence, a grim reminder of Lisa's still unexplained absence. The stranger's presence started to manifest in my daily life. I began to see his vague silhouette in the faces of passers-by, in the shadows cast by the fading evening sun, and even in my own reflection in the mirror. Every knock on the door made my heart pound, half expecting it to be him, stepping out from my nightmares into reality. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. My nights were filled with restless tossing and turning, my mind racing to figure out the man's role in Lisa's disappearance. In my heart, I knew he held the key to unraveling this mystery. My dreams, Lisa's memories, the stranger, they were all interconnected, part of a jigsaw puzzle that I was struggling to complete. But despite the exhaustion and mental turmoil, I persevered. The thought of finding Lisa, of holding her in my arms again, fueled my determination. My nightmares were no longer a source of fear, but a beacon guiding me towards her. The more I delved into the depths of my subconscious, the more I understood the enormity of the task ahead. The labyrinth of my dreams was a maze, its walls etched with cryptic symbols, its paths littered with enigmatic clues. It was a world of my own making, yet it felt alien, unfamiliar, and terrifyingly real. As the days turned into weeks, I began to question my sanity. Was I reading too much into these dreams? Was I losing myself into this mad pursuit? Yet, I couldn't shake off the gut feeling that told me I was on the right path. There was a sense of impending revelation, a gut instinct that told me that I was getting closer to the truth, to Lisa. With each passing day, I was getting closer to connecting the dots to piece together the cryptic puzzle. But then, I ventured further into the labyrinth. I was unaware of the darker revelations that awaited me, of the dangerous path that lay ahead. I was walking on a thin line between reality and the dream world, not realizing how easy it would be to lose myself in the process. Reality blurred as my obsession turned into a full-blown manhunt. The stranger was no longer confined to my dreams. He was the ghost I chased in the waking world. Every day was a hunt. Every night, a trial of decoding the signs that pointed to him. I scoured the city, tracing the symbols that appeared in my dreams. The old weeping willow, the carved stone. Every possible lead was pursued with a dodging determination. I saw Lisa's face in every stranger, heard her laughter in every gust of wind. The city became a living, breathing entity in my quest for the elusive stranger. My life took a surreal turn. Days were lost to stakeouts in questionable neighborhoods, to countless hours of sifting through public records, to following unsuspecting strangers who bore the slightest resemblance to the man from my dreams. My world was the night, lit by the harsh glare of the streetlights. My only companion, the silence of the sleeping city. Then, one night, I saw him. A man who matched my sketch walked out of a rundown bar. My heart pounded in my chest as I followed him, every instinct screaming at me that this was him, the stranger from my nightmares. The man was oblivious to my presence as he navigated through the maze of city streets. I kept my distance, hiding in the shadows, my eyes never leaving his figure. A cold, unyielding determination took over me as I shadowed his every move. I watched as he entered a rundown apartment building. A sense of dread washed over me as I stared at the decrepit structure. Was this where he had hidden Lisa? My mind raced with horrifying possibilities as I slowly approached the building. As I stood there, in the dim light of the entrance, a wave of apprehension washed over me. The silence of the night was broken only by the distant sounds of the city and the deafening pounding of my heart. I was standing on the precipice of the unknown, ready to plunge into a world that was born out of my worst nightmares. I knew there was no turning back. I was now a part of the world I had dreamt of. The lines between reality and my dreams blurred beyond recognition, but I also knew that it was this world that held the key to Lisa's disappearance. I was in the belly of the beast, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The hunt had now become a battle I was determined to win, for Lisa's sake. With a deep breath, I pushed the door open and stepped into the gloom of the old building. The stale air smelled of mildew and old paint, a stark contrast to the freshness of the night outside. A sense of foreboding seemed to hang in the air as I crept up the creaking stairs, each step taking me closer to the stranger, and, I hoped, to Lisa. The stranger's apartment was on the 3rd floor. As I approached, the sound of a muffled conversation floated through the air. I pressed my ear against the cold, hard wood, straining to hear. I could make out the stranger's voice, but there was no sign of Lisa. A sinking feeling washed over me as I considered the possibilities. I had come prepared. I knew there was a chance I could walk into danger, but it was a risk I was willing to take. As quietly as possible, I withdrew the gun I'd brought with me, its cold metal a grim reminder of the path I was walking. The next few moments felt like an eternity as I kicked the door open and charged into the apartment. There he was, sitting nonchalantly on the couch. A look of surprise flashed across his face as he saw me. I didn't give him a chance to react. Lifting the gun, I aimed at him, my hands shaking but resolute. "Where is she?" I shouted, my voice echoing around the room. The stranger stared back at me, his face a mask of confusion, but I didn't buy it. This was the man from my nightmares, the man who held the answers. Before he could speak, I pulled the trigger. The sound was deafening in the small apartment, and the stranger's body jerked back, then slumped on the couch. The room was deathly quiet. The only sound was my ragged breath and the echo of the gunshot in my ears. I looked around the apartment, my heart sinking. There was no sign of Lisa. The dread that had been my constant companion over the past few weeks returned full force. Had I been too late? Or had I made a grave mistake? As the reality of what I had done began to set in, I turned and fled the scene. The image of the lifeless stranger seared into my mind. I left behind the silence of the apartment, the echoing gunshot, and the unanswered questions. I was no closer to finding Lisa, and now I was a killer. In the pursuit of my nightmares, I had crossed a line from which there was no return. I had become a prisoner of my own actions, shackled by the weight of my guilt. And as I ran through the silent city streets, I was haunted by the grim reality of my situation. I was lost, not only in the physical world, but within the treacherous labyrinth of my own mind. I returned to my apartment in a daze, my mind reeling with the night's events. My hands still trembled, the echo of the gunshot fresh in my ears. I collapsed on the couch, the reality of what I had done slowly sinking in. I had taken a life, a stranger's life, all in the name of justice. Justice for Lisa. A few days later, as I tried to lose myself in the mindless drone of the TV, a news bulletin caught my attention. It was about a dead body found in a rundown apartment building. My heart sank as the reporter described the scene, a cold dread settling in the pit of my stomach. I sat frozen, my eyes glued to the screen as the image of the dead man appeared. The man on the screen was not the stranger from my nightmares. He had similar features, yes, but he wasn't the man I had seen night after night in my dreams. The man I believed had taken Lisa from me. A wave of shock washed over me. The realization that I had killed an innocent man hit me like a ton of bricks. I was a murderer. I had taken a life based on the whims of my troubled mind, on a string of nightmares that I had convinced myself were prophetic. My world crumbled around me as I grappled with the reality of my actions. The walls of my apartment seemed to close in on me, the deafening silence a stark reminder of my solitude and guilt. In my desperation to find Lisa, I had lost myself. I had let my dreams dictate my actions, pushing me down a path of paranoia and violence. The price of my obsession was a man's life, an innocent man. The guilt consumed me, gnawing at the edges of my sanity. For the first time in weeks, I wished the nightmares would return, not for clues, not for some sign of Lisa, but for a punishment fitting my crime. I longed for the torment, for the fear and the confusion. It was a penance, a small price to pay for the life I had taken. Yet the dreams remained elusive. I was trapped in a relentless slumber, the dark depths of my mind refusing to reveal anything more. I was lost in a sea of remorse and guilt, left to navigate the stormy waters with the crushing weight of my crime. Just when I thought I had reached the pinnacle of my despair, fate played a cruel trick on me. I was jolted awake by the sound of the front door unlocking. Rubbing my eyes, I squinted at the figure that entered. It was Lisa, alive and standing right in front of me. Seeing Lisa standing there in the flesh was like a punch in the gut. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, trying to dispel what I was sure was a hallucination, but she remained, her eyes wide with surprise as they landed on me. "Lisa?" I croaked out, my voice barely above a whisper. The silence in the room was almost palpable as we stared at each other, the tension thick between us. After a moment, she nodded, taking a tentative step towards me. She looked worn out and pale, her clothes dirty and wrinkled. It was clear she'd been through a lot, but she was alive and standing right in front of me. The relief was overwhelming, but it was quickly overshadowed by guilt and dread. She began to explain how she had been stranded in the middle of nowhere after a car crash, how her phone had no reception, and how she had to survive in the wilderness until she was able to find help, how she had no idea that she'd been missing, that she'd been the center of my nightmares and the cause of my guilt-ridden actions. I sat there in silence, taking in her words. The reality of it was too much to handle. All this time, all this guilt, all this torment. For what? A series of misunderstandings and miscommunications. My mind raced, trying to reconcile this reality with the world that had existed in my nightmares. I looked at Lisa, at her tired eyes and her gaunt face, and felt the weight of my actions crushing me. I had killed a man, an innocent man, all because of a nightmare. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Until next time.